In this video, we'll be looking at a few basic field properties as well as adding images as fields in the database. So this is what we've got on the datasheet view. If we change this to design view, you can see we've got quite a few different yes, no fields and a few others. So the first thing I want to look at quickly is the default value, which is a field property of quite a lot of types of field data types. And it's here, the default value. In this case, the only options are yes or no, so you could simply say no or yes, and then any new field would have, this is cosmetic, so if we go to yes, then we see cosmetic, the potential new fields has got nothing in the cosmetic tick box because the default value is no, so unticked. You can do the same thing if you actually want text or specific numbers to appear in a field when you create it. Then you don't have to change it if it's a common value that appears in your table. Then there's also the required property, which can also be yes or no, and that determines if you can leave that field blank or not. So for instance, you would probably want the name of, in this case, the plant to be required, because you can't really have an item that doesn't have a name. So that way you can prevent people from accidentally forgetting or leaving out a certain field when they're entering data. For number fields, you can see the field size property actually has a number of different types: byte, integer, long integer, and so on. And if we have a look what those mean, they basically specify what the maximum or minimum numbers you can insert into that field are. So byte would be 0 to 255, integer anything from minus 32,768 to positive 32,767, long integer being much larger, single even larger, and with decimal points, double with decimal points but larger, and so on. And the difference, besides what can be stored in there, is also how big this is stored in the database. So if you have a smaller number that's never going to exceed, for instance, 255, then you could potentially use byte and use the smallest amount of memory possible, which is important when you have larger databases. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you need decimals, obviously you need to choose one of the options that allows decimal points. If we're looking at the date or time option, then there's different formats that you can use, such as general date with the date and time, the full long date, medium date, etc., and as well for time. So that's something to keep in mind if you are using a date or time data type. Then if we have the yes, no fields, we can use either on, off, yes, no, or true, false. They all equate to the same thing, but it might be a personal preference if you want one of the other options. Then we've also got the primary key property that you can apply to one field in the table, which identifies the record as a unique record, different from other ones. And that becomes really important when we do relationships, which we'll explore in a later video. But you need to choose something that is unique to each record. So here they've assigned an auto number to every single record, so that's always going to be unique. For people, it might be something like their identification or passport number or something like that. Then if we want to add an image to a record, we can use the attachment data type. So we come here, save the page, and then it looks like this, a little paperclip. And to add an image there, we double click on it and we get the option to add an attachment. So it will bring up the browse options, and we'll just navigate to the folder and choose the appropriate image, and you'll see it listed there. You can actually add more, but we just want the one image, and then it shows us that there's one image there. And we can do the same for the other ones, and so on and so forth. Now, as you can see, it doesn't display in here, but when we turn this into a form, then we'll be able to actually see the image with the other information next to it.